Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name's Rachel from SomeRootsWander.com. Thank you for joining me again today. Today's video is going to be an autumn recommendation video, so I'm going to go over book recommendations, TV recommendations, movie recommendations, activities, and as well as some food recommendations that I have for the autumn season. This video is part of my 13 Days of Halloween series. In this series, I'm going to be releasing one autumnal or Halloween themed video for 13 days leading up to Halloween. So the first video is going to be out October 19th, and the last video will be out on Halloween, which is October 31st. Make sure that you subscribe and click the notification button in order to get all of the 13 Days of Halloween content. So I'm just going to jump right into my book recommendations. The first book that I'm going to recommend is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. This is a classic book. It is also a very short book. I originally listened to this as an audiobook on Audible, and I really liked the narrator's voice. It was very short. It was only an hour and 17 minutes. And I absolutely loved it. And one of the things that I really liked about it is that I can imagine the whole story in my head. So I know that I'm listening to or reading a really good book when I can start making a movie of the book in my head, and that's exactly what happened when I listened to this audiobook. So I definitely recommend that one. So the next book recommendation I have, I also listened to as an audiobook on Audible, and it is called Tales of Beedle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. If you are a Harry Potter fan, you will recognize this book because they talk about it in the Harry Potter series. And this is just a tale of short stories that come out of the wizarding world. One of the reasons why I decided to listen to this on Audible is because each story in the Tales of Beedle the Bard is narrated by a different narrator, and Jude Law is actually one of the narrators, and his voice is just chef's kiss when it comes to narrating a book. So the other narrators of this audiobook are also actors or actresses within the Harry Potter world. So for example, they have Evanna Lynch, who plays Luna Lovegood. Jason Isaac, who plays Lucius Malfoy, also narrates. I think this is a perfect book for this time of year. I highly recommend listening to it on Audible since they have the actors narrating it and they have the sound effects. I really think that it adds to the stories. The next book recommendation is The City Baker's Guide to Country Living by Louise Miller. I read this last year after I saw Darling Desi recommend it during her Gilmore Girls readathon. It has a lot of Gilmore Girls vibes because it's set in a small town in Vermont, and the main character starts working at an inn within this small town. The main character is always baking delicious pies and tons of other pastries. It does have a little bit of romance in it, and it did kind of remind me of a Hallmark movie, but it wasn't overly like gushy or romantic, so I was really able to enjoy it. So if you're looking for something that has Gilmore Girls vibes and that is lighthearted and with a little bit of romance, then this is definitely the book that you want to read for this season. Another great book to read this season is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. A Discovery of Witches is book 1 in the All Souls trilogy. This book is about a witch, Diana Bishop, who opens a magical book in the Bod at Oxford, and all of these crazy weird things start happening. And it's not only her that notices it, it's other witches, it's other vampires, as well as demons. This book also gives off a lot of dark academia vibes since a majority of the book happens at Oxford as well as an ancient castle in France. So this is a really good book if you like dark academia, witchy, spooky vibes, and a little bit of mystery, as well as a tad bit of romance. So now I'm going to recommend some books that I'm reading for the first time this year. So the first book I'm going to recommend is a new YA novel that just came out this year. It's called Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shane Earnshaw. So this is a kind of like a sequel to the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas, and this follows what happens to Sally after she marries Jack and becomes the Pumpkin Queen. So I started this book, I believe I'm on the 3rd chapter, and so far I'm really enjoying it. I can't think of celebrating Halloween or autumn without Nightmare Before Christmas, so this is definitely something I recommend reading. So the other book that I'm reading this year is called Bitter Magic by Nancy Hayes Kilgore. So this book is based on a witchcraft trial that happened in Scotland in the 17th century. The back says, a chance encounter brings teenage Margaret together with Isabel Gowdy, or Goody. I'm not 1% sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But anyway, Isabel Gowdy, a cunning woman who practices magic and travels in the fairy world. But Scotland is aflame with wars between the English, the Catholics, and the Protestants. In the Scottish Highlands, the witch craze is at its height. When Margaret starts to meet Isabel to learn magic, she too becomes a suspect. Can Margaret's tutor, a Christian mystic, affect the outcome? Bitter Magic is inspired by the true story of the witchcraft trial of Isabel Gowdy in 1662. So I did start reading this as well, and it's really good. It actually goes back and forth between Margaret and Isabel and the Christian mystic tutor that Margaret has. So if you enjoy historical fictions and witches, or interested in learning about the witchcraft trials that happened in Europe, I would definitely recommend reading Bitter Magic this season. So the final book recommendation I have for you this season is a prequel to the Netflix TV show The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. The book is called The Season of the Witch, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Book 1, written by Sarah Reese Brennan. And I found this book on Scribd as an audiobook. I did not realize that they had a book series that went along with the TV show. Of course, I knew that Sabrina as well as Riverdale all were inspired by the Archie comic series, but I did not realize they had YA novels that went with this. This book takes place the summer before Sabrina turns 16, and in this book she is kind of starting to get ready to leave the mortal world behind, as well as like testing Harvey to see how dedicated he is to her, and she's starting to just kind of dabble more into her witchy powers. So if you are a fan of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina TV show and you can't get enough of it, or if you like Riverdale or the Archie comic series, then I would suggest reading this. There is a couple more books after this prequel that follow along with the TV show that I'm probably going to read as well. Moving right along into some more recommendations, we're going to do TV show recommendations. So the first TV show I'm going to recommend is the first TV show that I started watching this year in August for the 3rd time in a row. It is the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina series on Netflix. I absolutely love this show. I love all the outfits and like the 70s vintage vibes, as well as all the witchy vibes. Definitely a good TV show to watch this season. Alright, so along the lines of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I have to recommend Riverdale. So Riverdale and Sabrina's world in her town of Greendale are like in the same universe, and they're both from the Archie comic series. Riverdale is not really dealing with the supernatural like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Of course, until the last season of Riverdale, they started kind of switching over into that supernatural vibe. But Riverdale is more of like a murder mystery. Like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Riverdale also has that quirky small town vibe to it. So if you enjoy like a good murder mystery, I would recommend watching that. Also, it's very much like Gossip Girl. It's kind of like if you take Gossip Girl and put it in a small town with murder mystery, that's what you're gonna get. I feel like the characters in Riverdale are very similar to characters in the original Gossip Girl. So if you enjoyed Gossip Girl, I would recommend watching Riverdale as like a fall version of Gossip Girl with murder mystery in it. The next TV show recommendation is going to be A Discovery of Witches. I already recommended the first book in that series. They did create a 3-season TV show to go along with the books. It has tons of dark academia vibes. It's very witchy. In the second season, they go back in time to Elizabethan England, which I thought was really interesting because I'm a big Anglophile and I really enjoy that kind of time period. The cinematography is really, really gorgeous, so I highly recommend giving that a watch as well. Another TV show recommendation has to be Over the Garden Wall. Over the Garden Wall is a cartoon miniseries about these two brothers that get lost in this strange, like, fantastical forest and run into all of these interesting characters and creatures. If I could recommend one show that completely encompasses the autumnal aesthetic and vibes of the season, it would definitely be Over the Garden Wall. I can't explain it in words, but it's literally the perfect autumn TV show. Okay, so another TV show that I'm going to recommend is a new TV show coming out on Netflix. It is called Wednesday, and it is about Wednesday Addams. Since it has not been released yet, I can't say whether it is actually good or not. But Tim Burton's involved in it, and I'm a big Tim Burton fan, so I'm assuming that it is going to be good. It looks like it's going to follow the path of Wednesday Addams and her going to school. So I'm excited to watch that this season and see how well it goes, but I always love watching new fall or Halloween or spooky themed TV shows when they come out. Okay, so last but not least is Gilmore Girls. Tons of feel-good vibes. There's so many different fall episodes in Gilmore Girls, and I always start rewatching Gilmore Girls in the fall. I think Gilmore Girls is a great show to watch in the autumn because Rory is going to school, so it kind of gives you those back to school vibes. There are several different fall festivals that the town does throughout the multiple seasons of the show, and it just has a lot of cozy, feel-good vibes. We're gonna jump into some movie recommendations for this season. First movie I'm gonna recommend is The Craft, that came out in 1996. This movie is about a girl that moves to Los Angeles and starts going to a new school. 3 girls that are already friends and in a coven start noticing that this new girl possesses some witchy powers, and they try to befriend her. They start practicing witchcraft together, and things don't end up turning out so well. So I always watch this every year. I really enjoy it, and I definitely think it's a good witchy movie to watch. Another witchy movie that you can watch this season is called The Witches. The original came out in 1990, and there was a remake made in 2020. I have not seen the remake, I've only saw the original. This movie is about a boy who accidentally stumbles into a witches convention that's being held at a hotel. The witches end up turning him into a mouse, and he has to fight back at the witches. So this is just another good witchy movie to watch. The remake has Anne Hathaway in it, and I definitely want to watch that at some point this year. I just haven't had time to watch it yet. Another great movie to watch this season is Dark Shadows. This came out in 2012. It was directed by Tim Burton. It's starring Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. Johnny Depp's character was cursed by a witch, and this witch buried him alive. He escapes 2 centuries later and goes back to his family home and the town that his family helped to found, and finds that everything is very different. So he has to convince his family that he is in fact their ancestor. He has to get his family home back in order, as well as the family business, and deal with the witch that cursed him. So this is definitely a light-hearted movie, and it's actually really funny. I love Johnny Depp and Tim Burton, so it is one of my favorites to watch during this time of the year. Another movie to watch during this season is the Harry Potter series. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It has the back to school vibes, the dark academia vibes, as well as the witchy. So this is another great series to watch or rewatch during this season. What is Halloween or autumn without rewatching the cult classic Hocus Pocus? As we already know, this is a very special year because we're finally getting Hocus Pocus 2. It's going to be coming out on Disney Plus at the end of September, and I am so excited. I've been waiting for this movie for years. I know a lot of other people have as well. I always watch Hocus Pocus every year, and I definitely will be doing that again this year, as well as watching Hocus Pocus 2 the day it comes out. Another movie that I like to watch every year when Halloween is upon us is Beetlejuice. Yes, it is another Tim Burton movie, but I feel like this is just a classic and it's funny. I love the characters that are in it, so I would definitely recommend watching that one as well. So now I'm going to recommend some autumn or Halloween festivities and activities that you can do. One thing that I love to do every year when it starts to get cold out is do some seasonal baking. So I typically bake a pumpkin pie as well as making an apple pie from my mom's apple pie recipe. Of course, you can bake whatever you want, but I feel like autumn is just a baking season. Autumn is the perfect season for baking due to the fall harvest because you have all the apples and the pumpkins, and there's so many different options that you can bake during this time of the year. Another activity that you can do this season is go to a fall festival. I live outside of Pittsburgh, so in my area there are tons and tons and tons of festivals. So I do like to go to one or two of those every year. I recommend just doing some online research to see what festivals will be happening in the fall in your area. So another thing that I like to do every year is go to a pumpkin patch. There are some pumpkin patches and farms near where I live that let you pick your own pumpkin. The farms also have just piles and piles of pumpkins that you can choose from that are already picked as well. But that is also fun. If you've never been to a pumpkin patch, I highly recommend it. I think it's such a great way to spend your day outside during the beautiful autumn season. Along the same lines as going to a pumpkin patch, you can also go to a farm or orchard to do apple picking. I only ever have went apple picking one time, but I did really enjoy it. It's nice to just walk through the orchards and be able to pick fresh apples off the apple tree and bring it home to bake in an apple pie or an apple crisp or just to eat. Slice them up and eat them the way they are. So another activity that you can do this season is have a Samhain feast. Samhain is an ancient Gaelic festival marking the end of the harvest season and the end of the year. A lot of the ancient activities that our ancestors did during Samhain have actually carried on into modern day Halloween. If you're interested in learning more about Samhain, I do have a blog post on the Samhain feast that I had that goes into more detail about this holiday, and that's going to be linked below. So a couple years ago, I invited my friends over for a Samhain dinner where we just sat down and talked together and shared a meal in honor of the end of the harvest season. The meal consisted of charcuterie, potatoes, roast chicken, roast pork. So having this feast was just a really nice way to celebrate the season with my friends and enjoy the season's food. So another activity that you can do is to take a fall-autumn road trip. So this year my boyfriend Kevin and I are traveling to Virginia to go to the Harry Potter Forbidden Forest experience, as well as to enjoy some of the fall Virginia countryside. In previous years, we've taken trips to other areas in Pennsylvania that have some really nice fall foliage. So if you have the budget and the time, I highly recommend taking a day trip or a weekend trip in the fall to experience the fall foliage and the change in nature. as well as some of the seasonal activities that I mentioned previously. So another activity that you can do in fall has to do with experiencing nature and the fall foliage, which is taking a fall hike. So I really enjoy being outdoors and being out in nature. Being in the woods or in the forest is truly my happy place. So I love taking hikes in the fall during my favorite time of the year, when again I can see all that fall foliage and the beautiful colors, when there's that crisp autumn smell in the air. So if you enjoy being outdoors or being in nature, I definitely recommend taking a bit of a hike or a walk outside, just so you can observe nature and observe the way that the seasons are changing. Last but not least is autumn fall food recommendations. So the first food item I'm gonna recommend is a pumpkin pie recipe, and it's simply the Libby's pumpkin pie recipe that's on the back of the can. I know that this may seem really basic, but I've had a lot of different pumpkin pie in my life, and I've had some pretty bad pumpkin pie. Every year I make the Libby's canned pumpkin recipe, and it turns out great. That's the recipe that my mom uses. That's the recipe that her mom uses. So that's the recipe that I recommend if you are looking to make pumpkin pie. This year I have decided that I want to make pumpkin pie from scratch. So I'm going to cut up the pumpkin, cut up the gourds, and I'm gonna make that and see how that turns out. But if you don't want to do all of that work, I would just get the Libby's canned pumpkin, follow that recipe, and it's definitely going to give you a good pumpkin pie. So the next food recommendation is Chipotle pumpkin soup with crispy chorizo and caramelized apples from Half Baked Harvest. I have the recipe pulled up on my phone. I made this last year, and holy crap was it good. There's like chorizo crumbled on top, and then you put the caramelized apples on top, and it's just chef's kiss. It is so good. It is one of my all-time favorite soup recipes now, and I'm probably gonna start making this every single year because it's so delicious. So like I said, it is a little bit involved because you actually do have to use like real pumpkin. This specific pumpkin soup recipe, definitely have to try that. Another food recommendation is apple butter, preferably homemade if you can make it yourself, or find someone that does make it. I get my apple butter from my mom, who gets it from an Apple Fest in my hometown. They have the Apple Fest every year, and they make this apple butter at a park where the festival is going to be, in these big giant cast iron like cauldron looking like things, and it is delicious. I love it on a piece of sourdough, or you could put it on a bagel, or you could dip it with crackers. I've done that as well, because I've had it on a charcuterie board. So make the apple butter or find homemade apple butter. You can get apple butter in a store, and it's probably going to taste okay, but I think apple butter is better when you make it yourself or find someone that makes it. And the last food recommendation is this Silk non-dairy almond pumpkin spice creamers. I've had many different pumpkin spice creamers, and this one happens to be my favorite. So I actually had a hard time finding this creamer this year, and I reached out to Silk and said, hey, I'm having a hard time finding this. I'm trying to use your location thing on your website, and I'm not seeing that this creamer is anywhere. And they told me it was discontinued, but then 2 days later I found it in a Fresh Thyme grocery store, and there was only 3 left, so I bought all 3. And then this past week I found a ton of them in Whole Foods. So I don't know if they actually discontinued this, or if they are discontinuing it after this year, or what the deal is, but I was able to find it. I know some Targets have it as well. So if you can find it somewhere, I highly recommend getting it, just in case it is actually going to be discontinued after this year. But in my opinion, it is the best pumpkin spice creamer. All right, so that is all of the fall, autumn, Halloween recommendations I have for you this year. I hope that this gives you guys some ideas of what to read, what to watch, what to do, what to eat for this season. I am interested in what you guys like to do and read and watch during this autumnal season. So let me know in the comments below what you're watching and what you're doing and reading. If you do pick up any of the items that I suggested in this video, let me know what you thought of them, or if you like them, below in the comments as well. Again, this video is a part of my 13 Days of Halloween series that's going to be taking place from October 19th to October 31st. So if you like this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribe and hit the notification button below. And I hope you guys have a wonderful autumn season, and I will see you in the next video.